Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Abominations in Technicolor, the podcast where we review the overlooked, underrated, and critically panned films of the past in a new light. A couple things we want to get into before we get into the show a little bit later on. We'll be reviewing The Fast and the Furious from 2001, but I wanted to mention that we started a Discord server. If you don't know what a Discord server is, Google it. But it's sort of a place where we can, sort of share our thoughts and opinions on movies, whether you want to share us your top 5 horror movies of all time, anything like that. We can interact with each other. So check out the link down below in the description, and let's discuss some movies. But not only that, joining me as always is Adam. How's it going, Adam?
It's going good. You guys may have noticed that we are covering a different film this week. So
that's true.
We were originally at the end of the last episode going to watch The Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
And we kind of decided in watching that movie, as that movie, it's a slow burn. It's a slow burner.
It is indeed.
And we want to bring you guys the best content possible. So we made a kind of a joint decision that it was in the best interest of the show to not do The Dark Crystal.
Right.
this week,
I didn't have it in me to talk about the movie for about an hour or so. I love the puppeteering and all that. The production of that is great, and I'm really looking forward to the TV series. But after watching it, I just didn't have it in my soul to talk about this movie on the show for whatever reason. Yeah,
please.
Yeah, I just don't think there's that much for us to explore with that movie. So it is what it is, and
we still love it though.
Yeah, it's great, and you gotta love Jim Henson and Frank Oz with what they did with that movie. But we wanted to give you something that's balls to the wall and just one of the most fun films from the early 2000s, in my opinion, and that is The Fast and the Furious. So I guess we can just get right into it, right? So this is our review for 2001's The Fast and Furious.
Let's go for a little ride.
This is yours, but if you win, you get her too.
What the hell is that all about?
A business deal that went sour. Plus, I made the mistake of sleeping with his sister.
All right, guys. So we've got The Fast and the Furious from 2001. This was June 22nd. So wonderful summer blockbuster hitting theaters. This movie, at least I remember making a big splash.
Oh, yeah.
From a cultural standpoint, we will get into that. But $38 million budget, which isn't too crazy for a nice return. So the movie did really well. And we all know the story of the slew of films that have come out since in the series. And but that summer, I guess the return earned it the 14th highest grossing film of 2001. So I don't know whether that's more that there were just a lot of really profitable, like a lot of big movies that year. Like you've got the likes of like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Shrek, Monsters Inc., Rush Hour 2, which I think Rush Hour 2 was really popular because it was, highly anticipated following the original.
Yeah.
The Mummy Returns. So another sequel. Pearl Harbor, Ocean's 11, the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes film. I think that was also a summer movie, if I recall. And A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, Oscar winner, right? So,
Oh yeah.
a lot of good movies in there. That's a nice lineup. I don't know if it's a 1985 caliber.
Not
lineup,
quite.
but still good. So we're going to give the Fast and the Furious a little bit of credit at its 14th place finish for the year and assume it's just because of all of the stiff competition in 2001. So Rotten Tomatoes has the Fast and the Furious at 53%, but with an audience score of 74. So a pretty well-liked movie.
Yeah.
This one was directed by Rob Cohen, who we know from his work on films like The Skulls, Stealth, which we talked about, was it last
Oh
week, I
yeah,
believe.
Jamie Foxx was in that movie.
You mentioned it as we were talking about the Maverick trailer.
Right.
And Dragonheart, which I really enjoy Dragonheart. I probably haven't seen that forever. That might be a movie we could possibly cover on here.
Yeah, that's like a mid-90s movie.
Yeah, Dragonheart's good. The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Was that Jet Li as the villain in there, I think?
Yes, yep.
Alex Cross. So I did not see Alex Cross.
I don't even know what that is.
I believe
Alex
that
Cross.
was the spin-off of the Bourne series. Is Alex Cross, that feature
Jeremy Renner.
Your best friend Jeremy Renner, was it?
It's not. I've never seen it. I've actually never really watched the Bourne movies. I think I may have seen the first one, but I don't know. That's a franchise that I'm just completely unfamiliar with.
Yeah, that's okay. We're not talking about that today.
No, we're not.
And this one, I think, I don't know if it's really that important or if it pulls anything from it, but the name and the title of the Fast and the Furious is pulling from a 1954 film starring John Ireland, Dorothy Malone, and Bruce Carlisle. So I've never seen it. I did see that it is available, I think, for free on Amazon Prime. If you're a member there, you could check it out. But looking at like the description of that film, it says a trucker framed for murder breaks out of jail, takes a young woman hostage, and enters her sports car in a cross-border road race, hoping to get to Mexico before the police catch him. So it's got truckers, it's got street racing. But it's like the guy, is he a villain or is he a hero? It sounds kind of, iffy. So
Yeah.
it's not really like a remake of a movie. It's kind of like just bringing in a popular title card or whatever and kind of revamping it, I guess. Or I guess it would be kind of like A Star Is Born, because that has its differences amongst the times that it's been rehashed as well. So maybe compare it to that if you like.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, The Fast and the Furious, I would go as far as to say that this film changed the world. At least my world as a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Like this came out like 2 days like around my birthday. And I mean, God, what a, this is the point where you're like just about ready to get your first car. So
That's true,
when
yeah.
you're seeing The Fast and the Furious out, like, I mean, tell me a little bit about your memory of how The Fast and the Furious 1 changed the
Ooh.
world.
Yeah. Okay. So when this came out, and I don't know if it was because of this, but when I was in like middle school, I was really into sort of like watching like car TV shows like on Spike TV. And this was, a couple of years before I was even going to get my license. And when I got my license, I had almost zero interest in like working on engines and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, maybe it was this movie may have sparked that interest where I wanted to get like aftermarket parts, like fenders and, like side skirts on my car that I haven't gotten yet because it's like 3 years before, I got my license. But I don't know. I remember seeing this movie in theaters. I believe we were out of town. I don't know if it was for like a summer basketball tournament for you or something like that. And we caught it on
I think you're right.
the weekend while we were there. I don't know what city we were in, whether it was like Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids or one of the larger cities in the area where we're from. But yeah, I remember walking out of the theater and, like people are just like squawking their tires and, there was a sense of adrenaline, in your veins after watching this movie. It was that like blood pumping fun. And I've always liked this movie. I never really thought it was like the best movie ever or anything like that, but it just, I don't know, it introduced me into sort of like street racing culture that I never knew existed being young at the time. And I don't know, in recent years, I've heard people sort of refer back to the Fast and the Furious and how like it's just maybe a blatant Point Break ripoff. And yeah, I can see that. But like I still viewed the movie as a good time. So it's kind of interesting hearing in recent years that like there's quite a bit of people that view this movie as a pretty bad film. So I don't know. What about you?
I don't know. I as far as the quality of the movie, I think I've always been able to rewatch it. And so it just is does it have Oscar performances? No. Is it a Oscar-winning screenplay? No, most definitely not. It's in no way, it has so many flaws. It's in no way a perfect movie, but I think it does some things really well that they fail to recreate in the sequels of the movies that I yearn for in watching the following movies. Like I don't think like even Too Fast, Too Furious, I even like a little bit more than some of the ones that are just like super over the top. Like we went and saw, was it 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years ago, we saw the
Fate of the Furious.
And that movie just, we both fell asleep. Granted, this was at Star Wars Celebration. We had been like sleeping in a convention hall 2 nights in a row after, like right before watching the movie. But still, I think it was the movie that was the reason that I had no ambition to finish. And I think sleeping in the theater is shameful. And I wouldn't be defensive about it if I didn't feel like it was that movie that was flawed in making that happen. But this movie, though, absolutely, like, people left the theater, multiple burnouts. Like, somebody in the theater, the employees must have been like so sick of the Fast and the Furious, because every time people left the theater and got in their cars, they're burning out. They're, looking to go find some lights for some underbody kit, put lights under your Chevy Cavalier or your Pontiac Grand Am. It's like, I even think that didn't the Fast and the Furious have merchandise like Fast and the Furious brand?
Yeah. Well, you had
accessories and stuff.
Well, didn't you have Fast and the Furious subwoofers?
No.
Oh, okay.
They were like Lightning Audio or something.
I think those existed though.
Yes,
like, you could buy Fast and Furious like subwoofers or like
Yep.
LED kits, like interior kits for your
Yes.
car, or underbody kits.
Yep. They probably had seat covers and floor mats.
Oh
and
yeah, all these
all that
accessories.
stuff. Yep.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like this movie, it sort of going back to sort of touching on Fate of the Furious, like that, and I've honestly sort of lost track of all these movies. Like I can't. Fast and
Yeah.
Furious 9, I think, comes out next year, and sort of the reason why we're doing this, the Fast and Furious, is because Hobbs and Shaw, the first like spin-off movie, it came out in theaters this weekend. So we sort of wanted to go back to, where this all started and, talk about sort of what this franchise has turned into. And with Fate of the Furious, like the only thing I really remember about that movie is all I kind of remember is at the beginning of it, it had like Vin Diesel like in Cuba racing this like old beater. And I remember the hood like caught on fire.
Right.
And for whatever reason, he's just driving this thing in reverse, like 80 miles an hour, like looking back and like driving the thing. And I think
And it
he
was
won.
on fire.
Yeah.
And
I think-
it was on fire for like 2 minutes. And
Right.
he just kept driving it, and it kept driving. Like
Yeah.
at some point that engine would have exploded and he would perish in flames. But with the glory of movie magic, he was somehow able to get it across the finish line.
Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, I can remember like the first three, and then these like 4, 5, 6.
Yes,
I
exactly.
know. I can recall 7 because that's the one that takes place in Dubai, and that was like Paul Walker's last film before
Yeah.
he passed away.
Right.
And I don't know, it's just kind of a big blur in the middle. But I
think
actually
that was that the 7th one?
Yeah.
Fast and Furious 7.
Yeah, and they had to like digitally recreate him
Yeah.
and use his brothers to sort of like stand in for certain scenes.
Yep.
So that one I think is more sort of I can recall that one a bit more because it has sort of
Right.
more, I don't know, behind the scenes stuff surrounding it and a bit more memorable, I guess. But I actually like Tokyo Drift quite a bit. And I feel like that movie is really rewatchable, and I like the sort of Japanese culture they introduce you to. I don't really care for Bow Wow in that movie that much.
No.
But I find it to be a good time, and I like that dude who has the southern accent and all that. But
Lucas Black.
yeah, he has that big southern.
Isn't that his
drawl.
name?
I think so. That sounds quite right. But
Yeah.
yeah, I really like the Fast and Furious, and it came out in a time where racing movies weren't really that front and center. I guess there was the Tom Cruise one that came out in the early 90s. What one is that? The Thunder. I don't remember.
That's Days of Thunder.
Yes, there was that
I haven't
one.
seen
but
that.
I caught
I've been
it.
meaning to watch it. It's been up on to stream for free.
Yeah.
Is that on Netflix maybe?
I
Something
think
like
so.
that?
I don't know if it's still on there, but I mean, these types of movies weren't really front and center. I mean, in popular sort of like blockbuster cinema, you weren't seeing really like racing movies, and especially
Right.
street racing. This was quite an underground sort of thing. So let's kind of get into that where this really sparked an era where you had shows like Pimp My Ride with Exhibit, or you had like Need for Speed Underground 2,
Yeah.
Midnight Club.
Yeah.
And for like 5 years or so, this was really dominating the mainstream sort of like pop culture, whether it's like MTV. You had all these like hip hop stars, really sort of putting this kind of like all of their sort of whips, whether they have their like 22 inch rims, whether they have the turbo in the car,
Yep.
driving these like Ferraris. I don't know. It's just this like it sort of dominated pop culture for like 5 years or so.
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
it's the idea. It made it accessible to like take a cheaper car, like an import car that you can, that's
like a Civic
affordable. And it now all of a sudden it's cool to like upgrade and put aftermarket parts on your crappy car to make it look like some kind of Frankenstein like monstrosity. You know, and just replace like all as much as you can to make it look cooler. And it's almost like the more the merrier with all of this stuff. It's like if you have something that's original on the vehicle, it like sticks out. So it's a cool thing though. Like I loved that. You could even do that on the games. It was like half the fun of maybe like Need for Speed Underground was like working on the car, replacing the parts, and it made it so it was like nobody really cared about or at least it didn't matter so much about like whether or not you were actually going to race the car. It was just like how it looked. It was a cosmetic thing.
Yeah.
And I think that was pretty fun. Like it's just a cool way to get people to be creative and inspire them and all of that. And it definitely had an effect though. It was like a massive like pop culture trend and fad, you know. Pimp My Ride, like I don't know if I'd want to watch it if it was still on television. Like there's something about that period of time following the Fast and the Furious where, and maybe it was just because of how old I was. Like I said, this came out, and then within that next year or two, I was doing like driver's training and buying my first car and looking to like, because it was my first car, I didn't really care for the look of it very much. So I was very much interested in how do I maybe customize it to look cool like Paul Walker's car, you know? I had a Ford Contour GL 1996 in black that I bought, you know, and I drove that thing for 7 years, and then it had to go to the yard after that. But that vehicle, you know, I tried hard to make it so that I actually liked it, and I think that I'd be lying if I said the Fast and the Furious didn't have some sort of effect on my perception of what I wanted my car to be like, you know what I mean? So that is the splash that it made for everyone.
Yeah.
At least for a teen boy growing up. But
yeah. But we have a clip here of Siskel. Well, no, not Siskel and Ebert and Roper.
Yes.
I gotta get in that mind frame because Siskel had passed a couple years prior.
Yep.
So at this point in time, Roper has joined at the movie. So let's get into this clip of Ebert and Roper talking about the Fast and the Furious.
The Fast and the Furious? I don't know. I think the Dumb and the Reckless is more like it.
I really like this movie. I think it's in the great tradition of summer drive-in movies. It goes back to movies like Death Race 2000 and Grand Theft Auto, and it is so much better than a movie like Last Summer's Gone in 60 Seconds. It has interesting characters. Vin Diesel has something going for him, I think.
Last Summer's Gone in 60 Seconds,
I love the fact that in L.A. there was no traffic and no cops, which we know, of course, is the way it really is in L.A., and I just felt that it got exactly what it wanted to get done. It just kind of delivered this kind of summer exploitation mentality in a clever way instead of a dumb way.
I'm thinking between this and Tomb Raider that you're going after the job that David Manning, the fictional critic who likes all these movies, is going after.
I'll stand behind both of those films.
You are being so kind to this.
Pauline Kael said, if we cannot enjoy great trash, there is... She said, what did she say?
You know what? I like great trash, too.
The movies are so rarely great art, she said, that if we can't enjoy great trash, why should we go?
You know,
This is great trash.
I like great trash. I've given
Yes.
thumbs up to movies that other people think, oh my God, that's a bunch of garbage. But this thing, even
You
for
have
what
to
it's
have the
trying to do-
trash-o-meter. A thumbs up for this movie, thumbs down
Come on,
for
Reggie,
Mummy
but
Returns.
Even the drag racing scenes. I mean, it's just the music keeps playing in the same way. It sounds just like a video game, and they're going
That's an
straight.
ironic point.
And they're
They
hitting
want-
they're
it's
hitting
a
those little
little-
rocket booster things, and then they go faster.
It's
What's
a little
interesting
satirical
about that?
point that they want you to think it's like a video game.
So you're saying they
They're
were
having fun
aware
with
they
it.
were making a
Yes,
bad
they were.
movie and they
Yes,
were having fun
They
with
weren't
that.
aware they were making a bad movie. They knew they were
They
doing
did make
that
a
with the
bad
music.
movie. They did make a bad movie.
All right, so clearly Roper really hates Fast and Furious. Ebert, sorry. He's talking about the trash-o-meter. You know, thumbs up for this movie, thumbs down for the Mummy Returns. And I think Ebert, the way he phrases sort of like, you can enjoy sort of trash. I think that sort of sums up this show in a way. And I don't know. I think Roper is trying too hard, trying to be overly critical of what this movie is. And I mean, Ebert even sort of says like this movie's better than last summer's like Gone in 60 Seconds, which maybe, but I sort of put these movies on the same page. We reviewed Gone in 60 Seconds, a few months ago, and I loved watching that movie. I thought that movie was a blast.
Absolutely.
But I don't know, the way Ebert phrases, you got to have the trash-o-meter, and you can enjoy garbage. I just find his sort of outlook with this movie in particular to be refreshing, and I think more people need to stop being kind of overly critical with movies like this. This isn't trying to sort of put any moral compass out into the zeitgeist or anything like that, or persuade your thoughts and opinions regarding a particular topic. It's just trying to be fast food in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is like he said, the summer drive-in movie. So you just want it to be something you can sit back and enjoy, and it is very in the vein as far as plot goes, as Point Break, to your point. So a familiar story in a context of something that could be interesting and exciting for people that maybe aren't plugged into the street racing scene. Like, this is like an exciting new, and street racing is something we saw in like movies like Grease, even like an old musical. Like, street racing has been around, but not in this like venue of like neon lights and sound systems and tricked out like Japanese and European cars, and it's just such a cool like way to highlight the culture of it all. But then throw it into maybe a plot line that everyone can like really buy into and understand and follow. So, you're at least kind of always just waiting to anticipate like what's going to happen when the plot unfolds with Paul Walker and what he's got going on and all of that. So I think it's a great way to formulate a movie. Like, it's got kind of all the things you really need in there, as long as performances aren't absolutely horrible. Then it had a recipe for success, and I think it was as successful as it could be. I mean, I don't see this movie with Rob Cohen at the helm doing any better than the $207 million. I mean, I think that's if you're putting $38 million into it and getting 207, I'd say that's doing pretty well. So those guys can say what they want about being trash or whatever, but I think the numbers show, and whether you think it's the best or not, or best of the year, I don't think anybody would say it's the best of the year, but I think it deserves to have a little bit of respect and acknowledgement that it is a successful attempt at what it was supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, we'll get into the cast a little bit later, but like this was a movie which pretty much had all unknowns. And look at what this franchise has sort of turned into, you know, like a lot of these, I wouldn't say, I would say there's maybe a handful of actors in this sort of franchise now that are really popular, you know, whether it's like Dwayne Johnson, you have Jason Statham in this franchise now. You know, Paul Walker was when, you know, before he passed, he was a really popular actor. Not that he was in the best movies or anything like that, but he was a really well-known star.
For sure.
You know, you had like Tyrese Gibson in this franchise later on. Ludacris, who he was a really popular, you know, hip hop, you know, star. I don't know how popular he is in the music scene now. I don't really follow that genre at all, but you know, there's some heavy hitters in the franchise, and you know, this movie, there's really, you know, there's a couple of people that you might sort of recognize, but other than that, it's really nobody. So to see it sort of turn into this massive franchise is pretty interesting. So
yeah. I think like when you talk about the actors and then blowing up on the scene and all of that, like Vin Diesel, I mean, I think you'd probably associate him with, he's the face of the franchise, right? But along with Paul Walker, obviously, but you know, he went on to do Triple X and the Reddick stuff, and I think like that's an indication that it's like this was his gateway in, and that's true for Paul Walker and probably Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster for sure. You know, she's only just had a few other things that, you know, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, I think, and then she was in Annapolis, was it, with James Franco?
That's right.
But you know, Michelle Rodriguez, Blue Crush, and SWAT, I think
Avatar
would be a Avatar. Yep. So, you know, I think this movie, for maybe all four of them, would be, you know, this is it. This is it's their big break. This is the one with the asterisk by it on their resumes, on their filmographies. It's the one that stands out, and the big break. So with that, I think it's got to be respected. So, definitely. But let's get into what this movie's about, though. I mean, I think like we've talked about the impact quite a bit, the impact on culture and the actors, but we talked about kind of establishing the culture and giving people a glimpse into this scene, this, like, you know, just like anything else, like a music scene or I don't know, this culture of street racing is not something that we had growing up in a small town, you know what I mean? So this was just like so fascinating, and they do a decent job of really just introducing the public to this street racing scene right in the opening of the movie, or at least in the first act. So we've got a clip of you know, kind of the guys arriving at the first race to open the movie, and let's check that out.
Okay, Hector.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Yo, what's up? Edward. How we doing this tonight? One race, 2G buy-in. Winner takes all. Hector, you're gonna hold the cash.
Why Hector?
Because it's too slow to make away with the money, man. Okay, good luck, guys.
Hey, wait, hold up. I don't have any cash, but I do have the pink slip to my car.
Wait, you just can't climb in the ring with Ali because you think you box?
He knows I can box. So check it out, it's like this. I lose, winner takes my car clean and clear. But if I win, I take the cash and I take the respect.
Respect.
To some people, that's more important.
All right, so there it is. It just introduces you to this sort of culture and this like underground society of these people, and it kind of even establishes sort of like the rules and sort of like the I don't know, just the relationship between all these people pretty well. You got Ja Rule in there. He's sort of this supporting, like, you know, the street racer that's in this upcoming race. And, you know, his career has gone from hip hop artist to
Shambles.
Firefest fraud.
Yes.
So yeah, Shambles is a good way to put Ja Rule's career lately. But I don't know. I found this clip in particular interesting, just to sort of like contextualize this movie in general. I don't know. It's just captures this sort of underground street racing society pretty well.
Yeah, and prior to that dialogue, you've got like Paul Walker arriving there, and they show just kind of like the different groups of people. You know, there's some different vehicles. They're checking under the hoods. They ask to see Paul Walker's car, and he's like, "Is this your car?" And he's like, "I'm standing by it." And Ja Rule has a really corny, badly dubbed voiceover line where he says, you know, "It's not how you stand by your car, it's how you race your car, and you better learn that." You know, and it's this awful line. It's so cheesy bad. That, you know, it's like he's like, what is he, like the car guru guy? Like out of nowhere, he's never met Brian before, and he's already saying things like that. So I thought that was, it's corny and cheesy, but you know, they're also trying to like establish kind of the rules, like you said.
Right.
And Hector, I like Hector in this movie.
Yeah.
He's good, especially as just kind of like a no-name actor. Like, guy's pretty solid. And for the most of the movie, he's pretty entertaining to watch and a good side character.
He's also in Bruce Almighty.
Okay,
he's in the alleyway scene.
Yep.
And they're trying to like jump Bruce after, I don't know, he's gotten fired from his job, and Bruce somehow, you know, conjures up a monkey to crawl out of the actor Hector's ass. So that's
okay.
Just fun facts for y'all.
Oh yeah. But I guess the thing that I take out of this scene that like stood out to me when I watched it was when Brian, or Paul Walker, says, "I'll take, I get the money and I get the respect."
Right.
And I think that's so like forced in there. Like, who talks like that? And they react, they laugh when he says it. Like, it's like, why did you say that? You're such a dork,
well,
you know? But it lends to Vin Diesel's character.
Right.
It's like giving you a little bit of like, it's like the dialogue of what Brian is saying is like making us, it's filling us in on what Brian thinks about Dominic Toretto and what Toretto is going to respond to in order to like let him into the fold. So I think he knows, like, if he's just some guy that's just like rolling in who has money or whatever, he might not be able to get in. But if he taps into like the respect and loyalty and family aspect that they push, and that's so important in this movie, then he can make his way into the fold. So
well, and also prior to this, there was a scene that showcased Brian sort of, you know, going to have a tuna sandwich. He has a crush on
with no crust.
Yeah, tuna sandwich with no crust, because he has a crush on Mia, you know, Vin Diesel's character's Dominic Toretto's younger sister. And, you know, he's trying to, you know, develop a relationship and get to know this girl. And, you know, I don't remember Dominic Toretto's friend, you know, the sort of douchebag guy.
Vince.
Okay. Yeah. Vince just sort of shits on Brian while they're at the restaurant or store or wherever sort of Mia and Dominic work at. And, you know,
Yeah.
there's a fight sequence and there's a altercation and sort of a clash between egos and all of that. So I think that really ties into this scene and maybe is sort of why Brian's sort of asking for respect if he ends up winning this race. So I think it all sort of like, you know, goes together, and maybe that's why he mentioned that. But yeah, I think what you said about him sort of like trying to tap into that sort of aspect with Dom, I think that's really him trying to sort of get into that, I don't know, just trying to, you know, get a little bit of that, I don't know what the word I'm trying to look for is, but trying to tap into that with Dominic.
He wants to show that they have similar ideals.
Right.
And I think he recognizes like that Dom is a man of principle. He's a man of loyalty. Like loyalty is important, and you see that throughout the movie where like he respects the fact that after this race, Brian follows Dom and picks him up in the alley and takes him home, and you know they have their encounter with Johnny Tran, and they get back to the house, and everyone else is just chilling out. Vince is playing guitar. Some of the guys are watching or playing video games or something like that, and drinking and hanging out with the girls and all that. And he says, why'd you bring the Buster? And he's like, 'cause the Buster brought me back, you know? And, dialogue aside, it shows that he really appreciates the fact that he was there and helped him out. And it's kind of like this like debt that he owes him. You know, he owes him a car, but he also owes him from keeping him out of handcuffs. So, he still owes him a car after that, even though he saves his ass. But I think that's a moment where Brian really makes some headway in earning his way into the group, and it slowly develops where Brian gets closer with Mia and kind of eventually earns Dom's approval, and Brian becomes friends with Jesse and gets closer to him too, and kind of understands him as a character. And there's a lot of good stuff in there, and as Brian's trying to learn more about what's going on, and they make this Race Wars event kind of the thing that we're looking forward to as being like the motive. And Brian does a good job of making Dom and the rest of the group feel like that's the reason he's there, is he wants to not just be friends with them, but he also wants to try to help them win Race Wars and beat Johnny Tran with the vehicle that Brian owes Dom. So they're all fixing up this orange like Toyota Supra or whatever. And it ends up being this pile of junk that they have because they've already put how much money into that green Eclipse, which we'll talk about later, that car and what happens to that car. But as the Race Wars event unfolds and they try to get a hold of the situation with the truckers and all these combination TV VCR combos that keep getting stolen out of these trucks for apparently so much money.
Right.
There's this operation going on, and Brian's trying to figure out who is doing that, who's stealing all the TV VCR combos, and because it's up to like $6 million in TV VCR combos.
I don't know.
From Panasonic, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And that's just a sign of the times. I'm just joking around, but yeah, it's the undercover cop trying to discover who's the culprit. There's some anonymity as far as who owns the 3 Honda Civics with green underbody lighting kits on there, and is it Johnny Tran? Is it Hector and his group, or is it Dom and his people? And Brian deals with the tug of war between I'm falling in love with Mia and becoming connected and friends and family with this group, with Dominic's group.
Yeah.
But then I have this responsibility as a cop, and we all see how it unfolds in the end, and all of that. And I think the movie built to that very successfully. I thought it was well paced. It had the right amount of steps to get to that point where you cared about all the characters and you cared about what was going to happen in the plot. But it didn't have too many of them in there. There wasn't like scenes that I would have cut out of there. I feel like everything was well structured in order to provide that great moment at the end, where we kind of reveal Brian as an FBI agent, and Dom and Mia both get in their own ways revealed that Brian is an FBI agent. And that's some of the cool parts about the movie, is that it has that suspense and tension. I mean, would you agree? Like the way that happens, I think, I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit different than Point Break. It's similar just because it's kind of that kind of story, but I feel like the Fast and the Furious did that very well. And I don't think that like it's to the point where I'd be like, oh, that's just like Point Break. Like that's bullshit. You know, I wouldn't dismiss it like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't recall Point Break. Like, I don't think Keanu Reeves' character falls in love with Patrick Swayze's like sister or anything like that, right? It just happens to be like
he's pretty close with I forget her name, Tank Girl or whatever. It's the girl from
Tank Girl.
Yeah, it's the girl from Tank Girl, and she was on Orange Is the New Black, and she has short hair.
Remember.
I think she's on. Is she on Biodome too? I think she's on Biodome maybe as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can never remember her name. She was popular in the 90s.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, it has the similarities, and maybe the way that if you looked at sort of the bare bones plot, you could say it's, quite similar. But I don't know. I just feel like there's enough difference in the way, the characters are, the setting of what the characters, this sort of like street racing culture. And I forgot to mention, this movie was written by David Ayer, who went on to do, direct Fury and Suicide Squad and Fury, really underrated movie, by the way. People need to really check that out. But yeah, I don't know. It's been a while since I've watched Point Break, but I can definitely see the similarities. I don't know if it's a blatant ripoff, though. Maybe just the way the whole, undercover cop, he's trying to break into this underground society.
Right.
It is pretty similar, but I think there's enough difference for me to completely separate it and not just, look at it as a ripoff or,
right.
a copy of Point Break, I suppose.
Yeah, you're always going to get that with crime. And I mean, there's got to be some way where you have the hero and villain, the protagonist, and the antagonist. And I don't know how else you would do that. I mean, that's just like, that's how stories work. You need to have that happen, and that this type of crime with this type of crime and this level of crime, you're going to have that corresponding level of law enforcement. So yeah, it's going to be similar. So therefore I don't think I'd complain about the Point Break factor, but
right.
But yeah, I love the way the story unfolds. I love the approach. I love how they had race wars in there. I'm glad it didn't just kind of go into just fully. The thing about this movie that's different than the other ones that I like about it is that it never really like completely separates from the street racing. They still have race wars in there where you're never leaving this scene of the street racing. Like all the other movies, it's on this other like military covert operation mission, this like let's save the world, and I actually don't like that very much. I love the way that this stays grounded, kind of in the same. It is a bit. There's a bigger picture thing going on, but it's not to that like point where I feel like I'm watching like Transformers or something. You know what I mean? Like this one, I love that they have race wars and it focuses on the racing almost all the way to the end, and then right at the very end, then you get kind of the resolution of, what's going on with the crime situation and who's actually the culprit and all of that. But I love that, and that's one of the things I'd take away from it. That for me at least sets it above those movies like 4 through 9 or 8 or whatever they're at right now.
Right. Yeah. I guess let's take a quick break and we'll get into maybe some of the cast members in this film and maybe a little bit of the soundtrack and some of the pros and cons of the Fast and Furious. So we'll be right back. Hey, Abominators, do you want to share your feedback, thoughts, and opinions, or just tell us what you're thinking? Well, then send us a voice message. Voice messages are an easy way for you to send us audio that might be featured on an upcoming episode of Abominations in Technicolor. And with the latest feature from Anchor, the platform we use to make this very here podcast, it's quite easy. Just call and you have a minute to get the message in. Either use the direct link in the episode description or call in using the Anchor app. We can't wait to hear from you. And now on to the show. All right, so we're going to get into some of the cast of this movie. We've touched on them a little bit, but here we have, what do we got? Vin Diesel. Obviously, where I first recognized him, maybe not, I don't know. I guess I had probably already seen The Fast and the Furious, but actually rewatching Saving Private Ryan. He's actually one of the soldiers that gets shot at the Watchtower scene.
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah, he has the note that he wants. Who is it? Caparzo to give to his
Saving
dad.
Private Ryan is littered with actors that.
Yeah.
They're all over in there.
Yeah, I think he's Caparzo in that film. So, yeah. And then obviously Paul Walker, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster. We've all sort of talked about them. But you also have Ted Levine as Sergeant Tanner, known for his role as Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, yeah. It puts the lotion on its skin.
He's pretty unrecognizable in this movie. He has pretty much a bald, maybe like a horseshoe haircut with big rim glasses and a goatee.
Goatee or a beard, yep.
Yeah, so it's always surprising. Like, oh yeah, he's in this movie.
Yeah.
Or where do I know him from? Oh yeah, The Sounds of the Lambs. Or he's, I don't want to. I shouldn't say that. And then what do we have?
We know what you mean.
Tom Barry as Agent Bilkins, who also appears in Too Fast, Too Furious, as well as MJ's dad in Space Jam.
That's right.
Yeah. Great scene where they're just playing basketball in the driveway. One of my favorite, moments from a movie from the 90s is that driveway basketball.
Now that's
scene.
a real sport.
Right. Great movie.
Yeah. He's like, what about after that? I suppose that you're going to fly, huh?
We also have
rules.
We also have Rick Yoon as Johnny Tran, who also played the villainous Zhao in James Bond Die Another Day from 2002. Yeah. That's the one where he has all the diamonds in the face, right?
Yeah, or it's metal, or I forget. There's something.
I think it's diamonds.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you have Matt Schultz as Vince, who's also in Blade 2, Torque, and The Transporter. So obviously being in Blade 2, I think that may have come out around 2000, 2001, but post The Fast and the Furious, he was sort of maybe typecast being in movies like Torque and The Transporter. So hasn't been anything notable, really. So the poor guy.
Yeah, there's not much for additional characters, and I
not really.
These guys. I think the Ted Levine and Tom Barry, the FBI agent stuff, I think that really kind of like, I don't know. I think that stuff reinforces kind of it drives the plot forward quite a bit, and it provides that like push and pull factor for Brian, because I feel like if those guys, Tanner and Bilkins, don't have good, I guess if we can't like root for them a little bit and understand their, Tanner especially, Bilkins in this movie is kind of an ass. He's kind of mean. He's kind of like he like he's trying to put on mistakes. Like when they bust Johnny Tran, he's like, I'm gonna put this on whoever I want. You can't really root for Bilkins much. He seems more like just kind of a hard ass. But Tanner, he's really like reinforcing that we can't trust Toretto, that Toretto beat that guy's face in with a wrench or whatever. And, I think that worked really well, because it even puts you in the position where it's like, I don't want to root for Vin Diesel because he's badass, but, I want to believe that he's not stealing the TV VCR combos from the trucks. But I think but Tanner says it's Toretto, Brian. It's always been Toretto.
Right.
So you got to know that Dom Toretto is stealing those TV VCR Panasonic combo, $6 million of them. There must have been like 1,000 trucks that they busted, that they stole from. But but those guys, they're good. I think they're fine. They're kind of disposable characters, but they're good. How about Lance and his snakeskin pants? Did you like Lance?
Oh yeah.
He's got this crazy look in his eye. They're like pumping, or they're asking Ted about the engines, like the scene.
Where are the engines, Ted?
Yeah. You see anything wrong with this, Ted? He's like, no. He's like, we got no engines, do we? I think some Nissan Z62s would be perfect, don't you think, Lance? What do you think, a 40 weight, a 50 weight? I think a 40 weight sounds nice. I don't know what are the weights? Is it pounds? Is it?
I don't know. Is it the weight
I'm
of the
sure
oil?
An engine weighs more than 40 pounds, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it's the oil either. That'd be, I don't know.
We didn't go to MIT.
No, or auto school, car. We don't know anything about cars. But that's a pretty funny scene. And I always think it's funny when they pull in the crotch rockets and the Honda 2000, Brian is like running in sight. Like there's
you can easily see him
in hell that Brian was out of sight running to get behind the whatever, the other cars in the garage or wherever they're hiding. They had to have seen Brian running. And that scene always bugs me, because I'm like, he's right there. Like, what are they looking at the ground? Like, what the hell?
Yeah. I'll give them a little bit credit. It looks like the guy on his bike like had his head down, like looking.
Yeah, he's looking at the ground.
I've always thought the same thing. Like, you can easily see him. He's like in the middle of the garage. Come on.
I know. Oh, it's bad. But it was a good scene. They pumped all that oil into Ted's mouth, and they figured out where the engines were. So, yeah.
Yeah, they try doing a little bit of weaving back and forth between who is actually, the person with the three Honda Civics. Is it Hector?
Right.
Brian goes snooping around Hector's garage, because Hector comes into Harry's, asking to buy 3 of everything for these Honda Civics.
I thought Brian did really well, and the scene played really well when he gets caught by Dom's group snooping around in the garage looking at those cars, and he makes it sound like it's all about race wars and that Hector came in and bought those parts for the Honda 2000 or the Honda Civics. I thought that worked really well. So I thought, like, oh God, like there's no way they're not going to think this guy's a cop, and that is such a turning point in the movie where you do see Dom. He tests him. He's like, "Are you a cop?" And I think performance-wise, it was good. And I don't know. I really enjoyed that scene. It's very tense, and it's such a crucial moment for Brian because he almost blew his cover too. And I think in the end, though, like as a result, instead of it taking away and being a detriment to him and losing trust, he actually like gains it because after that, he and Toretto kind of go and what do they go out for lunch and go for a drive. They talk about race wars. He wants in on whatever's going on. Like he really like gets in deep after that. So
yeah, well, Brian mentions, there's no way you're paying for all that stuff you got under the hood by selling groceries and doing tune-ups. So Brian wants in on what Dom's doing, and he's sort of hinting at those TV, VCR, and DVD combos.
It's a hot commodity, man. It's a hot commodity.
And you can see sort of the reaction on Dom's face, like, does this guy really know what I'm doing? But he sort of puts it off as like race wars is really what, where they make their money. But I don't know. He says, we'll go to race wars and then we'll talk. Is it, we'll see how things go there. And then maybe you'll join in on the club with, getting the TV.
He wants
DVD,
a good car
VCR
first.
Combos.
He needs to get his car first. Yeah. Yeah. I like that because it's like he's not quite there yet, and it makes race wars still important. You know what I mean? Right. It's like we got two different things going on here where the movie's going, so you don't want one to fall by the wayside. So that was good, but
yeah.
Changing gears here, pun intended. We wanted to dive into briefly. Just I find that, at least with the first two movies, I really enjoy the soundtrack.
Yeah,
and
it is good.
This one in particular goes back these 2001, late 90s. Like this is a time period where music was, in a special place. So wanted to talk about the Fast and the Furious soundtrack. Not every track, but I found it interesting that, and it's probably mostly due to the fact that he's associated with the movie being cast in the movie, but you'd probably find it interesting that Ja Rule happens to appear on 5 tracks on the soundtrack. I think he's like the main artist on 2 or 3, and then he's featured on 2 or. So there's a breakdown of 2 or 3, whatever. But you hear him in a lot of the scenes, and that's different. That's weird because it's like, okay, well, that guy's in the movie, and for me, it takes me out of the movie to hear Ja Rule, and then he's in the movie, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'd rather just hear other artists on there instead.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I don't necessarily mind Ja Rule like being on the soundtrack, but with him actually being in the movie, that's more of the distraction to me.
Yes, exactly.
I would much rather prefer him to be, featured in a couple songs briefly than be in this beginning or middle chunk of the film. And he doesn't really add anything being an actor in the movie. I don't know. His character is kind of lame. He loses the race. It's not like they needed to have Ja Rule in this scene. It's like he must have like somehow negotiated his way to being in the movie with the contract for like the being on the soundtrack. He must have negotiated, well, I want to be in the movie too. So they were like, okay, we'll make you a street racer. Something like that had to have happened. So But I really
he does provide the comic relief in that scene, though. You know what I mean,
Monica.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Even the scenes where he's just saying his lines, like we talked about before, like that's even funny just because it's so bad. It's like, oh God, like get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
But the other track that I think, we'd be remiss not to mention is Rollin', Air Raid Vehicle by Limp Bizkit featuring Method Man and Redman.
Great song.
That is probably the biggest track on the soundtrack, easily, without question.
That was a massive hit. That was really big. I think that was like on MTV.
Yep,
What was
everybody
that show
was
called? Total Recall.
Everybody was
all the
rolling,
time.
rolling. You know,
Yeah,
you got to do the dance when you listen to the song. It's very important.
yeah.
My favorite of all of them, though, is the last track on the soundtrack, and they play it during the SWAT raid on Johnny Tran's
The montage.
crew. Yeah, the SWAT montage, and that is the band Dope, and the song is Debonair. So if you guys haven't checked that one out, that one jams, man.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I'm not a big hip hop fan, but that song, I remember like being like, "What is that song? Like that song sounds so cool. I gotta get that." And I remember I probably downloaded it on some kind of,
Napster.
Yes, yeah, maybe.
In 2001, it probably was
Yeah.
Napster.
Yep, downloading one track at a time.
Maybe LimeWire.
Yep. Probably had some number of kilobytes per second that I was downloading at.
Yeah. Took 2 days to download one song.
Good times. Yep.
But let's get into some of the pros and cons about this movie. I really love one of my favorite parts about this movie is I really like the scene where Dominic Toretto unveils his dad's Dodge Charger.
Oh yeah,
That's one of my
great.
favorite scenes. And just that car in general, it gets briefly highlighted in the film, but I don't know. It was almost like unveiling Eleanor from Gone in 60 Seconds or something like that.
It was.
It's this
It was.
unicorn. But yeah, I mean the actors in this film had a lot of up and comers with this. We talked about pretty much all the the leads and supporting actors in this film. But I mean, you have the guy who plays Vince and the guy who plays Jesse. Jesse towards the end of the film is paranoid. He lost the race to Johnny Tran, and he comes back, and Johnny and Lance come on their crotch rockets or
that's a terrible scene for Jesse. That did
I'm
not
freaking
play
out,
well.
man.
I don't know what I'm doing, Dom.
God.
Yeah, it's bad.
Racing for pink slips with Johnny Tran's Honda 2000 with spoon engines.
I don't know how that even happens. Like, how did they not? He's like, this guy's running a Honda 2000, man. It's like, they know. Dom says to Johnny Tran in the first scene with Johnny Tran, when are you going to give me a shot at that Honda 2000? Right. And they know that he's been doing, like, how do they not tell Jesse, like, hey, you probably shouldn't race Johnny Tran? Maybe that's a writing flaw, but
yeah,
I don't
could
know,
be
whatever. Hopefully, did Jesse live? Did he live? Was he at the barbecue at the end of the movie or no? I can't remember.
Well,
I don't recall.
The barbecue was before that, I think.
Don't they have another barbecue at the end or no?
I don't think so.
I think I'm thinking of Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh,
they have a barbecue.
They do.
Where he's cooking on the hood of the car, and the grill is like the hood of the car. Oh man, car movies.
Yeah,
that's funny. Related to performance issues, let's talk about the performance of Paul Walker's green Mitsubishi Eclipse.
Ooh, yeah.
I have a few questions, and I know neither of us are mechanically professional or anything like that, but I have two things that stood out to me in watching the movie. First scene of the very first scene of the movie, Paul Walker's car tops out at 140 miles an hour. This is a problem because he can't compete if it tops out. But do you know how, like, his car ends up spinning out on the
no idea
track? Like, he's going so fast and it gets all squirrely and he spins out. Like, I don't get how that happens with his car because it couldn't go any faster. That blows my mind. And he's like, shit, something like that. So that was my first thing.
It happens again, though, when the actual street race, he uses his NOS too early, and
But
the floor of the floorboards of the Mitsubishi Eclipse are falling out. There's sparks and bolts flying everybody.
Nuts and bolts are falling out because he's going so fast, and the floor falls off the car. Like what?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But it spins again.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
It doesn't make sense. So, you're going in a straight line. What causes it to? I don't know.
Exactly. That's what we got. And his computer's like manifold is, something danger to manifold or something like that. And then all of a sudden these washers are flying all over, and then the floor panel, the metal panel like falls off of the bottom of the car, and there's a hole in the floor. Like,
yeah, it doesn't make sense.
What?
But then he's still able to drive the thing. He picks up Dominic Toretto while he's walking.
If anyone
down the
knows about this, please, give us tweet us on Twitter or something if we're overlooking something related to the way cars actually work. That if this is in some way realistic, then by all means correct us. But I just don't, see where going fast in your car could cause your floor to fall off. Now, those are some negatives, but I want to talk about one of the best moments of the movie for me, I think, in the entire movie was when Brian... Okay, so Vince is bleeding. It's at the very end of the movie after the failed attempt at stealing the TV VCR combos from the truck. The guy has a shotgun. They can't steal it because they're getting shot, and Vince gets stuck on the truck. They get Vince off the truck. He's bleeding out on the side of the road in the middle of the desert, and Brian has to, in the moment, he's already revealed to Mia that he's a cop, and he's expressed that he needs her help. He needs to go and save those guys because they're in danger and all that. And so we get to this point where Brian has to make a decision. I could either, I guess he probably just could have called 911 and said, there's a guy that's bleeding. But he, in order, I think, give him credit to get Vince help faster. Right in front of Dom, he gets on the phone and says, "This is Officer Brian O'Connor, not Spillner. Spillner?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is Officer Brian O'Connor. I have a victim or, an injury, blah, 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 blah." So the look in Vin Diesel's eyes and the music and the tension of the moment, I thought that was fantastic.
It was really good.
It was really great. And he doesn't even say anything. He just looks him in the eye. And Paul Walker's looking, he's on the phone, but he's looking Vin Diesel in the eye, Dom. And you can see like the tension on Vin Diesel's face of like, should I lay this guy out right now? He's betrayed me. Mm-hmm. But also there's this like tug of war of like, my attention should be on Vince. What's happening to my friend? He's going to die. Brian's going to help us save Vince. And that moment is so tense for all those various reasons. So it really provides like tons of emotion if you're still locked into this movie and watching it attentively. So I loved that scene. I thought it was
great.
Really great. And I think that one even like that for me does it for me better than anything in Point Break or, some of the other like undercover FBI kind of movies. Like I think the reveal was just perfect timing, perfect execution. It was really great. And that really set up where they were going to go with meeting him at the house, getting the car, letting him go in the end. Like, that's a great moment as well, where he gives him the keys. And I feel like all of that whole sequence was just really, really well executed as far as the story of it. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you can make more than one of these movies. Like, that moment right there, the bond that those guys have, and the loyalty and the relationship that they created, that's what drives you to be able to make 8, 9 more movies, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
It's pretty cool.
It establishes this like relationship that, like you said, there's kind of a tug and war, but like there's a level of like respect, but there's also kind of this like betrayal in a way.
Yeah.
So it just creates this like really layered relationship between these guys, and it makes it really interesting. And yeah, it was kind of a weird move to go with Too Fast, Too Furious with not having Vin Diesel. I'm not sure why, they sort of went that route, but it sort of follows Paul Walker's character.
You think maybe he was making Triple-X or something, or what do you?
It could have been.
If there's something to that, maybe we'll give you guys Too Fast, Too Furious, and we can figure that out for you eventually.
Yeah, that would be a fun one. But yeah, that's a great scene. That's probably the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
If I had to rate it, there's a lot of emotion, a lot of tension, like you described, and Vin Diesel's acting in that scene. The range of emotion the guy displays on his face, with, like you said, he doesn't even say a word. It's pretty phenomenal.
It's good. It is good. I don't know. It'd be interesting to know how many times they shot that scene.
Yeah.
Either way, even if they did it 100 times to get the perfect reactions or the perfect level of emotion, like, it's still good. It's still quality, and I think it's quality that it transcends the type of movie that this is. I think it's something to appreciate for sure. I'm glad we got time to talk about it, at least, or acknowledge it, because it's good stuff. And like I said, I think it establishes foundation for that relationship that allows them to use their bond through the rest of the series.
Yeah. It's really good.
He owes him that 10-second car, and in the end, he gives him the keys, man.
Yeah, he does.
You wonder, how's this all going to end up, and that's a pretty crazy sequence in the end when Dom flips that muscle car. The train sequence is cool too. Like, that's pretty awesome. You get that slow motion shot. Did they use that in the trailer? I can't remember. Like,
I don't
if they
recall.
showed that, but he gets that car up on doing a wheelie, man. Like, right off he talks about the chassis twisting at the starting block or whatever, and then you see this thing like lift up and do a wheelie as they start going toward the train track. And of course the train comes right in the middle of their race and they miss it just in the nick of time or whatever, but
right,
it's cool.
Yeah. But I want to real quick, I want to get into sort of what this franchise has sort of turned into.
Yeah.
So as we've mentioned, this movie is really about, a gang or a team of street racers sort of hijacking these semi trucks with these TV, VCR, DVD combos and selling them. I suppose they're selling them. They don't really indicate what they're sort of doing with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they taking them back
Plot
to
hole.
Blockbuster and returning them, or Best Buy? I mean,
Perhaps.
Who knows? But this franchise has gone from a team of characters hijacking these semi-truck trailers, which is kind of in the vein of like a Western with, these outlaws on horses, hijacking these trains in a way. It's kind of similar to that. And you have the cars sort of weaving back and forth and going under the semi trailer, which is pretty unrealistic. But the franchise has gone from that to this superhero like world-saving event. You know, even in Hobbs and Shaw, you have Idris Elba's character, which I haven't seen this movie yet, so I'm only going on with what I've seen in the trailers. But Idris Elba's character is this like villainous like character with like superhuman abilities, like superhuman strength and speed, and it's just gotten crazy. Like, what's your sort of viewpoint on how this franchise has sort of morphed in this like comic book-esque like franchise?
Yeah. It's just like over the top. And I feel like every time they want to bring it like up a notch, you know, but at some point you lose what's good in it and what's unique about it. So I don't know. It's just the characters have transitioned, and I think some of that is because we don't have Paul Walker anymore. You know, R.I.P. Paul Walker. And I think maybe that's at the point where they're like, well, we gotta kind of. But it changed before that too. At the same time, you know what I mean? Like bringing in characters, like they kind of brought over Han and Tej, Ludacris, you know, they kind of bring these other guys from some of the other movies in with the fourth movie and fifth movie and so on. And I don't know. I think I just think it's because they're trying to make sure that every movie brings it up a notch. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna be in space. We're gonna, you know, whatever. I don't know.
Possibility.
It just needs. It either needs to end or it needs to do a return to its original form at some point. But you're just going to run out of names, you know?
Well,
like, they had like, one is, the first is The Fast and the Furious. And then isn't one of the sequels called Fast and Furious?
Yeah.
Where they
Fast and Furious came out in 2009. So
I mean, just put the number of to your point about it, them being kind of blurred and losing track of, that's part of it. Is the titles are impossible to know. You know, Fast 7 or Fast and Furious 7. At least they put the number on it. Thank God.
Yeah.
But when they do titling like that, where it's like, I don't know what Fast and Furious, like which one it is. Is it 5? I don't know. So I don't know. I think it's just there's so many of them that now I don't really care about them. And unfortunately, for me at least, with sequels, it's like once you release the bad one, I'm kind of done. You know what I mean? Like that's what happened with me with Transformers. Like I think I saw the third Transformer movie and wasn't really blown away by it, so I haven't seen any Transformers since then. I don't know. That's just kind of how I operate. But
yeah,
I still like, you know, I'd still watch them if it was like, you know, didn't have anything else available.
and free, right?
And free, yeah. But
yeah.
I don't know. I still like Vin Diesel and these characters. They're still fun and everything. I love Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham and Idris Elba. Like, they're awesome. You know, I'd have a high expectation for like the level of action and special effects and what they could bring to it from that standpoint. But I'm not going to expect to be emotionally invested and it, like I was in this movie. I'm not going to expect that, and I probably won't get it with the way these movies are now. Now they're just popcorn action flicks, and you know that's fine. It's just not for me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I pulled up the box office for the whole franchise, and you know the first couple of movies, you know, did okay worldwide, but you know. Now, Fast and Furious 7, where was it? I just had the prices here. Or not the prices, the box office. Furious 7, which was the one where Paul Walker, you know, had to be digitally sort of you know, placed in some scenes. That movie made $1.5 billion worldwide.
Yeah.
You know, that movie made more than like the first two Avengers movies, I think.
Wow.
Fate of the Furious, which was the most recent one, made 1.2.
What's the domestic? Is that the worldwide you're reading?
Yeah. So these movies have really made a lot internationally. So domestic,
that's
though,
what I would wonder.
Domestic, Furious 7 made $350 million, which is still a lot. You know, most movies, these like blockbuster movies, other than like Marvel and Star Wars movies, you know, they make anywhere from like $200 to $400 million.
Yeah, it's twice as much as the original.
Yeah,
144.
So they've become these like blockbuster phenomenons as of late, which is really interesting. People are really eating these like superhero iterations of these Fast and Furious movies, which is crazy because I prefer the whole like the early on like street racing era of the franchise.
Yeah.
So it's completely morphed into, you know, from, you know, the VCR DVD TV combos to world-saving events where The Rock's now involved and he's like drop kicking a torpedo back in the Arctic. So it's crazy, man. It's crazy what this franchise has turned into, and it's sort of really lost what it used to be. You know, it's still all about family. You know, with Vin Diesel's character, but I don't know. It's just
you can have any brew you want as long as it's a Corona. Stay thirsty, my friends.
It's crazy what this franchise is now. It's like it's lost its soul.
Do you think that Corona sponsored the Fast and the Furious?
Maybe. I don't know.
And that I wonder if Dos Equis was like, damn it. Like, puntos. They got into the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah. But is there anything else you want to touch on with this movie?
No, not really. It was fun. I'm glad we made the shift, the pivot to the Fast and the Furious. It's one I've looked forward to doing. The Dark Crystal. We will still look to talk to you guys about when we check that out on Netflix, when the new series comes out, and I'll try to finish The Dark Crystal and see if I still like it anyways. But anyways, the related to other crystals, we are going to next week tackle Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So controversial movie. And the return of Harrison Ford for that one. So we look forward to that one. I think it's going to be definitely something we'll have a lot of meat to chew on with that one, being the movie that it was and having Shia LaBeouf on board too. So can't wait for that one.
That movie gets shit on a lot. I think a lot of people sort of don't give it the credit that it sort of deserves. You know, it's a Spielberg movie. It's still a well-made movie, but is it a well-made Indiana Jones movie? That's what we'll really get into. But guys, make sure to check out our Discord server. There'll be a link down below, as well as you can send us voice messages by using Anchor, just anchor.fm/abominationspod, and leave us your thoughts of Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So for Adam and myself, we'll see you next week.